If you want to create polarity, attraction, and connection in your relationship, it's up to you to lead. I know it's not fair. And a lot of men I work with say, well, what about her? When's it her turn to lead? Why is it that nice guys tend to avoid leadership in their relationships? It's because they fear rejection or getting their partners upset. And so they end up handing the reins over to her. But the thing is this, when a man won't lead, the woman feels like she can't trust him. She starts to resent him. And at first, she might appreciate all the attention, but soon enough, she seems to find he has no backbone and he's not making any decisions. And he's always leaving the pressure up to her. Now, it's not about control, it's about presence, strength, courage to lead and love. And when you do this, you'll find the connection and attraction and the polarity you crave when it comes to finding love. Welcome to the Nice Guy Show. I'm your host, Chuck Chapman, and I'm here today with Faisal Cooker and Ari Graff. And today we're going to talk about leadership in masculine energy. In his book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, and this podcast is actually based on that, Dr. Glover says one of the most visible consequences of repression of masculine energy in the nice guy is their lack of leadership in their families. Out of fear of upsetting their partner or appearing to be too much like they're being controlling or authoritarian or abusive fathers, nice guys frequently fall and fail to be the leader in their families. They leave the job up to their wives, and most women talk, but most of the women I talk with don't want this job, but they end up taking it by default. So guys, what do you think about leadership? Why is it always the dude's job to lead? And do you ever find yourself resentful because of that? Ari, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, nobody told me that I had to lead when I got married.
I was told there would be no math in this equation.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't on my radar. So when my ex would give me hints that she was expecting me to lead, it felt like she was asking me to do something that wasn't natural to me. So I think that I did resent it. I also felt like, well, you're actually a good leader. You're doing this really well. So why should we? Why should I have to step into something that feels unnatural or unfamiliar to me? So I think I really kind of resisted and resented this for a long time, and she resented me too.
Mm-hmm.
So that I think that's a quandary that a lot of men fall into, is that, especially if you are a nice guy, is you just don't feel like that's your natural way of being, is to lead in a relationship. So is that just something that is true about me, or is that something that can be changed? So, it wasn't till the shit hit the fan that I realized, like, I'm going to have to change it if I want to keep my family together. So then it was probably too late, but it's something that now I think is so critical. If you adopt this masculine feminine energy framework, which a lot of people, when I introduce it to them, like friends, they think it sounds like a bunch of woo woo stuff, and it doesn't have value to them because their relationship seems to be working okay. So it seems to be something that men often find when there's problems in their relationship, when the shit has already hit the fan. Is that something that you've noticed?
Yeah, definitely. I think the guys I work with, they always say nobody comes to see me because they're having a good day. People generally reach out because, shit's hit the fan in their life in some way, and generally there's a crisis in their relationship. And so when I point out to them, oftentimes, like, it's your lack of leadership in the relationship that is causing some of the problems in the relationship. Sometimes it's like a little bit of a light bulb goes off, and other times there's kind of this resistance of, well, I don't want to rock the boat, just kind of the typical nice guy stuff. What about you, Faisal? Have you seen this show up in any of your relationships, or what was it like for you to kind of understand that leadership was part of the nice guy persona that you needed to break free from?
When I was introduced to that concept, it was only because after a separation, breakup, and when you're introduced to the concept that you have to lead, you're thinking, "What? I've been programmed all my life to be pleasing everyone, seeking everyone's approval, and now you're telling me to lead." And that sounds very much like it's a bossy, it's controlling, and you shouldn't be doing something like that. You should be just, like, I think it's also in my culture as well. You have to just be kind of like more subservient, just everybody else, just be the yes man. And now you're telling me you gotta lead. When I discovered that, there was some resistance, there was some roadblocks to it, because I was thinking, well, I'm going to get a lot of pushback. I'm not a natural born leader. Why should I be doing this? Why is it necessary? I had all these questions. So, like anyone who's got a lot of questions, the proof is in the pudding. As I say, you gotta test it out and test and measure. So when I started to see that, when I up my leadership, and the more leadership I had, it meant that I was more in my masculine energy. The lack of leadership meant I was in my feminine energy, and there was a lot of shame that came up. I was like, "What? I'm a woman. What's going on here? I have all these feminine traits where I was conditioned, brought up, part of my DNA, whatever it is, and now you're telling me to go the opposite way." So there was a lot of it, but the response was good. I mean, did you guys ever have that part when you were testing it out? There was like pushback or resistance to it, or she would get really angry, annoyed? Because I got that at the first initial stages because I didn't feel too confident in that leadership.
Yeah, and I think that happens, especially when not when you haven't taken that role, and all of a sudden you kind of step into it, and especially if you step into it like pretty unpracticed. And I think there's this idea that leadership is, like you were saying, dominance, or leadership is like, we're going to do this and you're going to follow me. And I think that's really a poor definition of leadership. I think a leader actually is somebody who inspires people to a vision that gets them to a better place, which is essentially what coaching is, right? I mean, we have to hold for the client a vision for them and inspire them to get to where they want to be. So leadership is very similar in that if you're, if you're like, "Hey, we're going to go do this," that feels very dominating. But if you're like, "Hey, you know what would be really fun right now? What if we were to go get a blanket and have a picnic in the park and just sit there and relax?" And, that's inspiring somebody. They go, "Yeah, sure, I want some of that." But if you're like, "Hey, we're going to the park. Come on," that's dominating
Yeah,
leadership.
but isn't that sometimes confusing? Because when you're a little bit dominant and say, "Hey, we're doing this," and you get those text messages saying, "Oh, I love that dominance," and you're thinking,
Yeah.
"Crikey, I'm confused here now," because one guy I've got to be like,
Right.
be
I
this
think you have to
guy
read the
who's
room,
like,
you have to read the room. If you're,
that's it.
if you haven't been doing that, and you've been acquiescing your leadership, and all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, let's go to the park," they're not going to respond to that. But I think if you have been practicing leadership in it, and you're doing it from a place of playfulness, I think that's the other intention of telling somebody or making that sort of demand. It's really coming from a place of playfulness. You're not really saying, "Hey, let's go to the park," or
There's
so.
there's
a
more
couple
to
of
it, right? Go on, Ari. I'll
You
let you
both are
lead.
talking, so I can't.
Oh yeah,
You lead now.
Yeah, one of you fucking lead.
yeah. There's a couple of important points here that you're bringing up. Like one of the points Chuck is bringing up, like the leadership is a gift that you're giving to your partner, or maybe to your kids, and that's the proper way to see it. As long as it's kind leadership, as long as there's kind of an ethical backbone to it. But the other thing Faisal was bringing up was you're going to get different responses to your leadership, and it may not be positive, at least on the surface. And I think this is something a lot of nice guys struggle with is, you may be leading really well and not get much positive feedback from your partner. And how do you handle that? Because your leadership can't be based on whether you're getting a positive response, because then you're still actually being a nice guy, I think. So
Right.
Well, isn't it confusing when you say, okay, when you're talking about positive response, right? So when I met this, I was out with friends and there was this guy. He was total dominant, like real masculine, real strong, knows what he wants. Probably people would call him alpha. And we went out, we were going to a restaurant, and he just like took over. And we were like, everybody was like sitting behind him and just following every single thing he did. And no one kind of like even stood up or said anything. And the girls were just melted in his energy. And, right, okay, well, guys, we're doing this, we're doing this. He just set the tone, did everything, organized it all, handled all the problems. And the way he was unapologetically so dominant and fearless, and the things that he said, he didn't really care. Now, I kind of like copied that and tried that, right? The girls didn't respond in the same way. I'm like sitting there on the dinner table. I'm trying it this way. And they just looked at me like, go back down, right? That's the alpha. You go back down right there. And I was just thinking, how come, I'm saying the same thing.
Again, I
So
think
can get
it's
a
just
positive.
kind of that energy that you're putting out, right? It was kind of a natural flow energy for him. Like this is in part like who he is, but also I think that just in the way you described it, there was a sense of love behind it. There was a sense of like, hey, I'm actually taking care of you guys. And yours was like, oh, I'm going to experiment and see if this works for me. And I think people just felt that intentionality behind it and were like,
It,
get back
It
down.
was, but it was also getting that approval from women.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
what it
yeah,
was.
yeah.
It's like it was.
Right.
Oh, you know what? He's getting the girls are melting at him. I'm going to try the same thing. I
Yeah.
tried it, and it was like the energy was just so off. I couldn't carry it through because I just got the role of being a leadership, and I didn't read the room. I didn't have the practice. Didn't have that balls to follow it through. And I think this is the mistake a lot of men make is when they learn about masculine and feminine is right. Okay, cool. I've got to be this. They put the leadership hat on and they go and then she gives them pushback and then they revert back to being the nice guy and say, oh, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Because if they'd never taken leadership, she's going to test it, in that push. Oh, you're going to try and lead now, like, let me test this. I was talking to a guy this last week and we were on a call and he was having some issues with his partner and basically not leading. And so I said, why don't you lead her into a conversation? It's a difficult conversation, but, talk to her. And then he came back and he's like, yeah, I had the talk with her and boy, did it go bad. I mean, she got really upset with me and I didn't know what to say. And so we ended up not talking for like a day. And then, we came back and we talked and we worked everything out. And actually, she, saw my point of view, but the whole thing was a disaster. And I'm like, it wasn't a disaster. It didn't work out the way you wanted it in the first conversation, but you bringing that up and letting it be messy, a day later, y'all had a conversation that cleared everything up. So there was, in fact, a value out of that. There's a value out of what you did, Faisal, of you tried something, it didn't work, and then you had to go back and ask yourself, why didn't this work? What wasn't working for me? And I think that what nice guys often do is they'll try something and it will feel like it's a failure, and so they won't learn anything from it, and so they'll just go back to old nice guy patterns and behaviors.
Yeah, because they're
That's
afraid
right.
to stick to it.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yes,
think
Ari.
this is what I was trying to say. Oh, can I speak now?
You can speak.
Yes, you can speak. Yeah.
This is what I was trying to say before. I mean, nice guys want validation for their leadership, and it just can come in different forms. Right. And part of it is learning to validate yourself, which we're just not used to doing. That's like a crucial mental skill. So if you are listening to this and stepping into leadership for the first time or developing it in a new way in yourself, you're going to have to validate just putting in the effort. That's part of the job of leadership, and it's learning from your efforts. It is getting feedback, but part of leading yourself is listening to yourself and taking chances, taking risks. One of the stumbling blocks I had when I was married was, my wife would want me to take initiative on things or lead on things, but then I would want her to tell me how to do it. So there is a point that you get to where you have to be willing to try things, and that is part of leadership, is experimenting, taking risks, and it's not necessarily getting a cookie for your efforts. Men want cookies. So if you need a cookie, ask your men friends for a cookie.
We call it,
to validate your efforts.
Those are biscuits, Faisal.
Biscuits, yeah.
Biscuits,
cookie,
yeah.
I've heard of the Cookie Monster. Yeah, we want cookies and sex.
You don't know
That's
a
what we
biscuit
want.
monster?
Ari, you were saying, think about the leadership as well. You've got guys who can really well lead in their work. Right? So I've coached so many guys. They're just killer at work. But when it comes to the women, it's just they're completely passive. And like you said, Ari, they don't take that initiative. Now, Chuck, as you were talking about, leadership and how important it is, I think sometimes it can be really hard to understand this concept, to conceptualize it. So one of the ways I was thinking was, she doesn't want another man to parent. That's what she's looking for. She wants a guy who takes lead, knows what he wants, knows how to get there. He can organize himself, sort himself out. She doesn't want to have to parent him, because I hear a lot of women say, I'm telling my husband, go out with your friends, go out for the day, leave the house, do something, make some. She's always constantly nagging at him. But that nagging is because she's acting more like a child that needs to be told what to do at every single stage. Whereas she's saying, well, figure it out. Like I said, I said to my kids, and it really does get me as well, because I'm saying to my kids, look, we've done this rodeo so many times. Come on, you get up, you know what to do. Why do I have to keep telling you? Yeah, but tell me, Dad, what to do. I'm like, no, take initiative, work it out. And they're so afraid of failing. I'm like, no, keep failing. And that's what leadership is about, because when you fail in the relationship, you get her stinky emotions, and that's what they want. They want to avoid that. It's like, oh, my mom's going to tell me off again.
Well, I think what you're talking about there is really key. That if she's saying, go out with your friends, go do this, she's basically saying, get in your masculine energy, okay? Because the masculine energy is all about doing. So go be a man, go hang out with your friends, go do whatever it is that men do. And I think where we fall down, I don't know about you guys, but my favorite thing to do in the world is nothing, just nothing, hanging out, kind of thing, right? And there's nothing more unattractive to my wife than me doing nothing. She wants to see me doing stuff. And so if I am basically sitting in my feminine and doing nothing, that's unattractive. And she's like, hey, let's go do this, or why don't you go do this for me? And it's really about, she's calling you into your masculinity. She's calling you into that masculine energy and saying, go.
I love doing. I can't, like the nothingness. I know we want the ultimate aim for the masculine is to get to nothingness. Once you've done everything, worked it out, solved all the problems, and then you're like, I've achieved, been there, done that. And I think it's the achievement of, once you've done achieved, it's like, I can relish in that nothing.
Well, guys, thanks so much for tuning in today. Be sure to check us out at theniceguyShow.com. You can connect with us there, sign up for our mailing list. And if you like this episode, check out number 39, Why Your Woman is Not Your Best Friend. That's Nice Guy Show, episode number 39. And with that, we will see you guys next time.
You've been listening to The Nice Guy Show with certified Nice Guy recovery coaches Ari Graff, Chuck Chapman, and Faisal Kokar. Be sure to subscribe to this channel so you can listen to our latest episodes, and visit us on www.theniceguyShow.com. If you have any topics you'd like to hear us discuss, send us an email at support@theniceguyShow.com. Thanks for listening.